Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Hey homies, homegirls, homeboys, home trans, all the work from homers out there. Thanks for listening to us. I'm Naresh Vissa, and with my co-host Adam Schrader, you are listening to the Work From Home Show. Today we have an awesome guest for you. His name is Dan Pontefract with us. He's a founder and CEO of the Pontefract Group, a firm that improves the state of leadership and organizational culture. He's the former chief envisioner and chief learning officer at the Canadian national telecom company Telus. In 2018, he was named to the Thinkers50 Radar list of the 30 management thinkers most likely to shape the future of how organizations are managed and led. That's why we brought him on the show, because the future of organizations are in flux as far as cultures go and as far as the way people work go. And he's the author of the new book, Lead, Care, Win, How to Become a Leader Who Matters. So, Dan, welcome to the Work From Home Show.
Naresh and Adam, what a joy to be here. Best of the holiday season to you.
Yes, same to you as well. And let's start with, you were named to Thinkers50 Radar as one of the 30 management thinkers most likely to shape the future of how organizations are managed and led. Why did they name you to this, and what are your predictions on the future of how organizations are managed and led and how that ties into working from home?
Not clear as to how or why, but thankful and respectfully humbled by such a distinction. We're all just basically living off of the backs of giants before us. So we're building upon the discourse and intellect of many greats before our time and adding to it. So I'm thankful for the Thinkers50 crowd. They're just great peeps as well, all of them. In terms of predictive analysis, I don't ever reckon to have a crystal ball. However, clearly 2020 is a year like no other in our generation or our time. And I think partially with the result of us having to contemplate what is this life we're carving out? What is this work life we're trying to address? I think it's given a lot of leaders, a lot of people, time to marinate in what is a better moment for them in the future. So what I do hope for, devoid of said crystal ball, is that each of us have ultimately taken the time, or will take the time, to pause and reflect and to contemplate what might be. And when I say what might be, I'm really asking and pleading with humanity to sort of take a look at, well, how have we always done things, and was it really good enough? And so when you're forced to work from home, for example, I think that does beg consideration, whether you're a small mid-market organization where you're a mom and pop shop working on Main Street of your hometown, or you're a giant enterprise on the publicly traded stock markets. Well, why are we here? What's your point? What's the point of us being in business? Why are you leading? Why are you a team member? And then to sort of really, really almost existentially ask yourself, is that good enough? Can I be a better person in this thing called life or work life? So that's what I'd like to see.
So whenever you write in here, how to become a leader who matters, who are we looking at mattering to the most? Is it a leader who matters to the employees, who matters to the public, or both, or kind of what is the focus?
What a great question, Adam. In my books, I sort of like to play word games with titles and subtitles. And so if I may, I think I'll start with the title and come back to your question about the subtitle. So for purposes of I guess, shock. Why would anyone tie the words lead and win together in a title? I thought, Dan, you're talking about a more caring form of leadership. Is that how you win? Well, actually, it's sort of a play on words, and I like people to sort of think a little bit in terms of what a title means. And in this particular case, it's actually reverse engineered. So if you want to win, i.e., if you're a leader of others, the hearts and minds of others, or if you're a leader of self, and we all, Adam, are leaders of self. So if you want to win towards what it is that or your goals are, either leading self or leading others, you need to care both more about yourself as well as those that you serve, whether that's the team, the community, the environment, fill in the blank. And that comes through your leadership. So if that's reverse engineered, then we take a look at the subtitle. So in full, how to become a leader who matters. Well, this is the entire point. For you to matter to yourself, you need to take care of yourself. And I think the book and the according 9 lessons that are in it suggest that we're not. And I'll get to that in a second. But the second point, of course, is that some of us are privileged to lead others. Again, team, a community, a congregation, an entire organization, a country, a state. And if we're not mattering to those people, if we're not caring about how they feel, operate, et cetera, then again, we're ultimately failing as both a leader of others and a leader of self. So it's like a double-edged sword there. So long-winded way of saying, leadership starts with you. You need to be far more caring in almost a selfish way about what it is that you stand for, what it is that you're doing to manage and behave differently, whether it's your time, whether it's how you enter a room, how you leave a room, whether you actually answer emails, ignore texts, whether you're a bully, whether you're kind or empathic and good-natured and giving and not just altruistic and benevolent, but a better person of kindness and care and understanding. You say sorry. You relate to others by showing your humanity, that you make mistakes. And all of that suggests that, at this particular junction, I don't think we're doing a good enough job of caring about how we come across and what our personal intent is. Needless to say, that extends to some of the leaders out there, many leaders, whom aren't doing that for the teams and et cetera that they serve.
Dan, with regards to small mom and pop physical businesses, we've seen the economy, the global economy, just sputter. The recovery's been slow. The lockdowns have been off and on. And the mom and pop shops, the physical businesses, I would venture to say that they've struggled the most. So how can they survive this new abnormal work from home digital environment?
Naresh, I couldn't agree more in the sense of small ma-pa shops, if you will, kind of the high street, main street shops where they employ 1, maybe up to 5 or 6 people, are struggling the most significantly during this pandemic. Couldn't agree more. So with that said, it's also a time of reflection for those types of leaders of self, leader of others. And what is it that they might be doing differently or could contemplate doing differently? Well, first of all, one must never forget that we have to remain curious and embrace change, which coincidentally are 2 of the 9 lessons that I get to in the book. So if you think as a mom and pop shop that what got you here is going to get you there without being curious as to what you might do differently and thus then embrace that difference and actually implement it, you're in for a rather rude awakening. I think that goes without saying. So, that being the stake in the ground, so to say, what can they do? Well, so have you considered some form of, creative co-branding, co-working together, trying to find ways in which a one type of shop, let's say, some sort of goods on the high street or the main street, might partner up with a service and offer, if you shop in both of our shops together, we're going to give you a 10% discount, or maybe 3 or 4, and they're differing, verticals. I think that what we need to remember is that if we're not open to different ways in which to procure, to sell, and to nurture relationships with potential or current existing customers, then where do the customers go? They go to whatever's convenient. And if convenience is going to be the killer of the mom and pop shop, I suggest the mom and pop shops that they need to dissuade that thinking, their own thinking, get creative, embrace the change, and do things completely radically different that are allowing and will allow them to hopefully sustain, if not prosper, mid and post-pandemic.
What are some of the ways you think leading and carrying and winning are changing now that more people are having to do that from home and from a distance from their coworkers and their customers that they didn't have before?
Well, I mean, again, one of the things I really have seen that's working, and I think others might glom onto, is an adage I've said for years, but I think it's coming full bear here within the pandemic because of our isolation, because of the fact that not every shop is fully open. You can only get 30% of clients into shops now, and there's queues and lineups outside the door, right? There's just all this added baggage that goes to trying to make a living for many small or mom and pop shop type organizations. So the adage I'm alluding to is my network is my net worth. And when you're a mom and pop shop, clearly, for the most part, you're selling within the vicinity of your community. That might be slightly, your concentric circle might extend a bit into maybe other parts of the state or the province. But generally speaking, you're not a full-fledged online massive retailer. You're serving loyal community-based customers, if you will. So again, what are you doing as the leader of that shop to extend, your network? How? And I'm not referring to marketing, although one might argue it's marketing. What I'm getting is it takes, as any study suggests, somewhere between 6 and 10, customers to repeat that singular customer over time, and the cost of, ensuring you have that customer to come back extrapolates or accentuates so many more magnitude-wise if you're not taking care of them. So my point, long-windedly and perhaps more succinctly, is what's this mom and pop shop doing to build deeper, greater, larger swaths of networks of people whom might be interested in their wares? So, are there giveaways, contests? Are there ways in which that you can use groups online or otherwise? What are you doing to instill a sense of community that's going to allow that community base to grow and to come back and to then propagate and recommend your wares as a mom and pop shop? That is probably the single biggest tact I can see a mom and pop shop small business doing, is to spread the news and word of their shop by building up the network, tending to it like a garden. Gardens have weeds, they need water, they need nourishment, they need sunlight. Think of it metaphorically like that. What are you doing, as painful as it might be, to expand the network of people that know and respect what you do?
And would you take those same leadership lessons and principles and apply it to work from home and entrepreneurship, or do you have another set of leadership lessons and principles that you would recommend to those listening right now who aren't mom and pop business owners?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for those of the aforementioned we just discussed, sure. I mean, I think there's no greater capability that we need to, all of us need to instill and to work on, is that sense of network, and the whole adage again of my network is my net worth. So fantastic. However, I mean, there's other ones. Clearly, when you're not running a mom and pop shop, when you're an individual contributor, or you're a leader of teams and you're working from home because your business has been sent home, whether you are public sector government employee, state organization, like, publicly traded, what have you. So what can you do? Well, first of all, what I've seen, and the data suggests this from many different angles, whether it's in the U.S., the EU, Canada, et cetera, is that we're getting really stressed out. And so the levels of stress and mental duress are on the increase. And not surprisingly, given, again, we've been sent home, many folks have had income cuts, or there's other issues, whether it's COVID itself and afflicting family members, the inability, to maybe travel as you might before. So again, I get that there's mental duress. So what are you doing at home to ensure that you have attended to those potential or indeed actual mental duress pieces? So what does your calendar look like? Instead of the 30-minute, 50-minute, 45-minute commute there and back to work, what are you doing with that time? Are you just getting up and starting to work? Are you building in physical activity, meditation, contemplation time? Do you have times in the day where you're just literally getting up and either going outside? Are you contemplating, maybe instead of having another Skype, Zoom, WebEx, Google Meet call, to suggest to your colleague that maybe we can have a walk and talk where you put in your earbuds and off you go into the wilderness and actually talk to someone on the phone like we used to? What are you doing to look not just at the calendar, but the magnitude of work? For some reason, we think, and again, study after study is suggesting this, that we can now take on more for some reason because, again, we're not commuting, or that we have somehow found more hours in the day because we're working from home. That's, as I've said once before in the book, actually, a boatload of balderdash. We have to be very careful about our hours, our load, how we're spending our time, and we do need that physical, mental, and emotional disconnect from work, so that we can be capable, able, even better employees tomorrow. So really, people, tend to what it is that you're doing on a daily basis. Be physically active. Don't sit on that laptop all day. Don't multitask. Don't sit on a call and also stare at your phone and scroll in social media or answering all those texts. We can't do that because there's a duress that we are creating on our own physical and mental selves.
So how would you know, as either a business owner or leader, or maybe like a project manager or somebody, middle management, how do you know whether your group needs kind of the ideas that you're putting forth in your book and everything? Is it something that every single business can be aided by, or is it a way you can look at it and say, yeah, we really need work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question, Adam. And twofold. First of all, let's not kid ourselves. Just because I wrote a book about 9 leadership behaviors doesn't mean that I too need work on those leadership behaviors. We all do. So I'm no prophet. I'm no perfectionist. I am not perfect. And whether I was, an executive and a chief, whatever, even in today in the world that I run, I am working on several of those lessons. So let's first come to grips with the fact that each of us need to self-assess where we think we have deficiency, and then address it. The second piece to really the question that you asked is astute, and that is the credible, proactive, engaged leader will be doing 2 things. A, not only that self-assessment piece, but B, will be asking the team how the culture and kind of the leadership and the operations of the team is doing based on those kind of 9 behaviors, and asking the team where we believe there are issues as a team and where the team believes that the leader needs some help with. That's the authentic, transparent, caring type of leader I'm getting at. The one that is vulnerable and humble enough to ask the team, hey, how's it going here? Or B, what else might you recommend that I need to do, both individually and as kind of quote leader of the team, end quote, for us to do? And then through that kind of analysis, assessment, feedback loop, call it what you will, then set out a constructive, performance or development path that allows both those team-based criteria to be reflected and addressed, as well as what that leader ought to be individually addressing.
How do you know whether your employees trust you enough to give you that honest feedback? Is that just something do you have to make it kind of a blind survey, or what? Because, if you're a bad leader, your employees might not want to tell you so that they don't get fired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I've seen that several times over my career. First and foremost, I think what leaders need to come to grips with is in analyzing themselves and saying, well, actually, do I have the trust of the team right now to contemplate something like this? And if I don't, do I come clean? And I think that's the best tact, and I've seen that work. So, for example, you've got a kind of hierarchical, semi-sociopathic, leader who's a bit of a bully and puts on the Teflon suit every day and shares no emotion whatsoever. They're a dime a dozen out there for certain. Now, if that leader believes, as is my thesis, and again, based on research and my own doing, when you care, when you're exhibiting these behaviors, the 9 lessons as a leader and as a team, you end up achieving more, whether it's productivity, revenue, EBITDA, profitability, engagement, customer sat, and supplier sat, you name it, right? So it works first and foremost. But where I'm going with this is if they don't believe or believe that there is some sort of mistrust with the team, then that leader ought to come clean and say, all right, you know what? I need to change. I'm going to come clean with you and say, look, I want a fresh start. I want to be the more caring, empathic, authentic. I want you guys to have fun. I want you to feel motivated. I want you to feel trusted. I want you to feel as though you can make decisions, that you can come up with ideas, that I am not both the bottleneck and the jerk that sits behind the desk and tells you what not to do and what to do. I believe in the old adage, there's no I in team now, and I want to apologize for past mistakes, failures, what have you. That vulnerability, guys, of being open enough and transparent enough and truthful enough to say, I'd like to change my ways, is kind of step one. And when you broach that, then all of a sudden leaders are viewed as humane, but then the team says, oh, well, okay, now I guess if she or he's coming clean, maybe we can be a little more trustworthy of him or her, and maybe we can fix some of the things that we've been yapping about for the last few months.
Well, to me, that sounds like marriage counseling. I think the same applies to relationships and marriage. Hey,
that's another astute observation. So you guys know what you're doing when you prep for these interviews. But seriously, like one of the things I mentioned in the book is this: you're not in the people business; you're in the relationship business. Like, yeah. End quote. Yeah. And so I've been in a marriage for 25 years this year. That's a relationship. It's not like Denise and I in a people business. We're like working on our relationship each and every day. My relationship with my 3 kids is a relationship we tend to and nurture every day. And that's difficult with 3 young teenagers, trust me. But I'm still working on it. Now, why is it that when we go to work, and this is where I'd like to go now, we're at work and all of a sudden we've got to put on a whole different suit, whether you're an employee, a director, a VP, a president, and we sort of act at times without emotion, or we act with too much emotion, but that emotion is a visceral, I'm the manager, you're the subordinate, you will do what I say, thou shalt. That's not a relationship. That's a transaction. And we're not in transactional situations in the organization. Yes, I'm not naive. I've been through this, guys. There's decisions that leaders have to be made. The buck will stop here somewhere. But when you're involving the team, when you're collaborative, when you're, respectful, there's civility, there's inclusivity, that tends to time and time again, go more towards a highly engaged team who feel trusted and empowered. Hey, the decision may not go your way, but at least I was heard and I feel as though I'm part of something as opposed to being talked to and transacted at.
So with your company, you're talking about you're going in, if somebody hires you and your group, you go in and you try to improve, according to your website, you improve the state of leadership and organizational culture. If I'm a business owner and I think my company might benefit from this, what kind of mindset do I need to have whenever I hire your company? Like, what makes a good client for you, essentially? Do I just have to say, you know what, I might hear terrible news, but I'm going to listen? Or kind of what mindset would a client need to have?
Well, there's a few mindsets. One is invariably leaders are not stupid, and they've heard the rigmarole, they've heard the feedback, they've heard something from the front lines, from middle management, from the team directly, the rumors, the virtual or physical water cooler talk. There is something there. Leaders are not dumb. And so that would be step one, is for the leader saying to him or herself, okay, there is something amiss and awry here. I think it's time that I do something about this, whatever this may be. So it could be, like, for example, pre-pandemic, the team had been yammering on about maybe having a flexible work schedule so that they might work a couple of days from home. They don't have to be in the office all the time. So I've been in situations where leaders have listened to that feedback, and we went through a whole exercise of assessing, analyzing, and figuring out the culture of the team so that will it support not always face-to-face arena, and that it could be virtual. Let's say 2 days a week or something like that. That's a leader who's listening and then saying, oh, we should go through this assessment and then figure out what are the right behaviors, operating procedures. Things change when you're now virtual halftime. And they were well set for the pandemic because a leader listened, a leader did something about it, then implemented change, and then the pandemic hit, and they're just sailing because now they're 5 days a week from home, somewhat obviously. But they had a leader who had listened, believed, wanted to change, then change, and then a pandemic hit. What a fantastic example. Did that several times. However, the flip side of the coin is, of course, a leader who has heard the feedback and then says, hey, Dan, could you come in and sort of just let me understand what I'm missing here and what I need to do? And you may work individually with that leader and help him or her sort of change some ways. But that then becomes what I call ATNA, all talk, no action. They listen, and then they say they're going to change with the team, and then they don't. And usually that fails because the leader has not involved the team in both the assessment and then the definition of what those norms or new kind of operating behaviors ought to be as a collective versus, the individual leader saying this is the high road, my way or no way. And those often fail. So there's other ways to kind of define the dimensions in which to get into organizations and to say, hey, how you do it. But the biggest one that I find so successful is A, the leader listens, B, is humble enough to then say, I should probably do something about this. C, brings in me or otherwise other folks that can then help them with the change to a lighter day, if you will.
Yeah, and Dan, I think one of the biggest takeaways that I'm getting from you and from some of our previous guests, and I don't know why so many leaders or people who are in positions of leadership, I don't know if I should call them leaders, why they don't do this, but that is what you said earlier. First, accepting what the situation is and then saying, hey, I need help. I need to make this change in my personality or in my strategy or in the way that I do things. Those are two, I guess, signs of vulnerability, which I think is a good thing. But for many leaders, it's a bad thing. And they want to be right. I think that at the end of the day, even if the strategy is wrong or if the process is wrong, they don't want to be proven wrong, even when they know that they are wrong. And so to me, that's just, it's terrible. And this is in all facets of life.
Say what you will about his leadership style, and there is much written about his leadership style. One of the acts that I respect of Steve Jobs was a very unknown, at least certainly unheralded act that he took prior to being diagnosed with cancer, and that was he reflected on the mistakes that he made and Apple made as an organization, and said, "Gosh, could we learn from this?" And so he hired a couple librarians and historians, in essence, to dig back deep into the annals of the beginnings of Apple in '76 and move forward to whatever day it was in the mid 2000s, to resuscitate the mistakes, the failures, and the learnings of both Jobs and Woz, but also the organization itself, so that they might learn from those mistakes so as not to make them again in the future. Now, this is Steve Jobs. We often think of him, and rightly so, as the berating lunatic who called out people aggressively, unkindly in meetings and so forth. And those are proven stories. However, he had the humility to recognize that he too made mistakes, and that they should learn from those mistakes for the betterment of Apple's future. And that's a self-reflective, highly emotionally intelligent leader whom, sadly, we lost.
Well, I've studied Apple and Steve Jobs, I would say probably more than the average person. And to my knowledge, first off, yes, Apple is one of the top 3 most valuable, if not the top or the top 2 most valuable companies in the world. And Steve Jobs is the one who founded Apple. But if I recall correctly, he served as CEO 2 different times. And I think after the first time, he got fired as CEO and went off to start Pixar and do a couple of other things. And then when he came back, I think that was the kind of finished product of Steve Jobs that was the good leader. But the early Steve Jobs, the one in his 20s, the one in his 30s, who wouldn't shower or wear shoes to work and who just yelled at people and wanted to do everything on his own and make every single little minute decision. I don't think that was a very good leader, and that's why the brand struggled. But when he learned from the mistakes and had successes after he was let go from Apple, and when he came back, that's a Steve Jobs that turned Apple into what it is today.
Well said. And thank you, John Scully III, for both firing Jobs in the beginning and then for creating a runway to bring him back in 1993.
Yeah, and that's props to Scully, too. He was a former CEO of Pepsi before Apple, and props to him for recognizing that and putting his own ego aside. Mm-hmm. Now, in your book, in one of your books, you have a process called the open thinking process for creativity. Can you share what that is and how our listeners can benefit from it?
Man, you two really do your research. Well done. So my third book called Open to Think was a damnation, in essence, on our futile existence of freneticism and overly busy, burdensome workloads and mindsets where, and it continues even in this pandemic, as I've slightly alluded to today in the chat. We tend to dig ourselves into the holes of doing, and we don't know how to get out of the foxhole. So we're just in a constant hamster wheel. We pretend that we know how to multitask. We're sitting at baseball games and hockey games and the ballet, and we're on our phones as opposed to watching to our kids. We're in one-on-one meetings, and we're not paying attention to the person right in front of us. Like it's a bit difficult to talk about because it drives me pretty bananas. But there's hope, and again, I'm not inventing anything new. This is not Wonder Bread 2.0. I'm basically taking us back to our elementary school days when our grade 3 teacher, like Mrs. Krabappel, would say, okay, folks, we need to work on our creativity and our decision making, in essence. And so, and separate lessons, if you will. So we always learned about our creative skills. We learned about left brain and right brain. We learned about how to paint in all the different colors, different brushes. We had these kind of think tanks with our grade 3 friends, and we'd come up with the innovations of the world. But then maybe in grade 4 we'd start learning about the decision making, the so-called critical thinking. All right, well, if X is equal to Y, what is Z? What does that mean? And so on and so on. So I honestly, I'm just resurrecting what we were taught to remind people what it is that we should be doing now in our adult lives. And so the kind of open thinking process is very simple. There are 3 types of thinking. We have creative thinking, which of course is where we can generate new ideas. There are no constraints. We're basically saying, do we dream or can we reflect? So that'd be kind of step 1, if you will. Step 2 is critical thinking. And that's the analysis of ideas, but making timely decisions, not sitting on a fence, waiting for more data, just literally analyzing. Okay, time to make a decision. So it's decide. It's decision time. And then the third type of thinking is applied thinking. And this is what we're really good at as adults. And that's the execution of said decision from the creative thinking. And so, but what I urge people to think about is it thoughtful action, meaning you're not just doing for the sake of doing. You indeed have looked at the balance of your load. You've looked at whether or not it can fit, and you're not stressing yourself out to just add on more doing. So in essence, it's creative, critical, and applied thinking. And in a simpler form, I call it dream, decide, do, and then repeat.
Great. Well, we have heard from Dan Pontefract, founder and CEO of the Pontefract Group, a firm that improves the state of leadership and organizational culture. Check out his new book, Lead, Care, Win, How to Become a Leader Who Matters. The website is danpontefract.com, Pontefract at the end. Pontefract. We'll post that in our show notes. Dan, are there any final thoughts or anything else you want to promote and share with our listeners?
No promotion. It's not my raison d'etre, but I will urge listeners and the both of you to contemplate another kind of piece of homework action for you individually, and that is what I call the declaration of purpose. And that's essentially a 1 or 2 line statement that acts as your North Star, and that's what you believe in and how you're going to operate your each and every day. There's some great examples out there, but I'll just succinctly give you mine so you have an idea of what you might do. Spend some time noodling good words that mean a lot to you. Essentially it answers the question, how do you want to be known when you leave a room? So my declaration of purpose is as follows. We're not here to see through each other. We're here to see each other through.
Nice. Very good. Well, Dan, thanks so much for joining us on the Work From Home show. We greatly appreciate it. To all our listeners, check us out at our website. That's workfromhomeshow.com, www.workfromhomeshow.com. Email us, hello@workfromhomeshow.com, hello@workfromhomeshow.com. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or just want to stop by and say hello at workfromhomeshow.com. And until next time, keep on working from home.